back on? Okay. So
Okay.
we are now back
Yes.
recording. And let's turn this back on here so that you can see my screen. All right. Let's make sure everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I have 5 tips to make most of your accountant or accounting professional's relationship. And as some of you know, I'm Shelley, and I am a chartered professional accountant. And I come from when they were still called certified general accountants. So I've got both designations. And so I'm an accountant. So what I'm about to teach you might be just a little bit biased. I worked and had my own public practice for 12 years, and I worked in industry and government, and I kind of covered all the basics. So these are some of the tips that I learned when I was running my own public practice to sort of manage client relationships and how to make it work the best. Oh, Tamara's coming. Excellent. Okay, I'm just letting Tamara come in here. And hi, Tamara. Oh, she's just connecting to audio here. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm not on video. I'm still in my car right now.
Oh, that's okay.
That's fine.
All right. So I was just saying that I'm Shelley, and I'm a chartered professional accountant and a certified general accountant. So I've got both designations. And I had my own public practice for 12 years, and I worked in industry and government and public practice. And see, these are some of the tips that I learned when I was running my public practice to get the best sort of bang for your buck with the client relationship. And it goes both ways. So although I'm speaking from the accountant's perspective towards a client, as a client, it works both ways. So let's go, and I should have a poll. So let's just see here. I might have to stop sharing so I can run the poll. That's what I'll do. I'll stop sharing. Let's run the poll first, because I would like to see how you deal with accounting professionals. Tamara, this might be a little bit of a challenge for you to answer if you're driving. So don't press buttons if you're driving. Just hang out, and I'll say what the answers are verbally, and then you can just tell us what your answers are here. So I'm going to launch the poll here now for everybody. Feel free. First question is, how do you complete your taxes? And the first answer is, I'm DIY all the way. I have a bookkeeper who does them. I have an accountant who does them. I use a tax service like Liberty or H&R Block, or I have family who does it. Or is there another alternative? And then the second question is, do you use or have you used an accountant or bookkeeper now or in the past? And so the first question is, yes, I love my accounting professional. Yes, I have a love-hate relationship with them. Yes, but I'm looking for someone else. No, why do I need one? And then other is the final one. So let's just see here. We've got everybody answered, I would say. And so I'm going to share the results so that everybody can see. So we've got one person who's DIY. I have one who uses a bookkeeper, 2 who has an accountant and they use them for their taxes. And then 3 out of the 4 you love your accounting professional. That's awesome to hear. And 1 person, no, why do I need one? So based on that, let's go back to sharing my screen here. And anybody dizzy yet? All right, everybody can see the screen?
Yes.
Awesome, perfect. So let's go to the next screen here. So yeah, it was really lovely seeing that there's a lot of you who do use accountants and who like your accountant relationship, because that's really, really important. Because let's face it, you're telling your accountant some very personal information about you. They get to see your numbers, they get to see what you do, how you spend your money, and it's really important to have that comfort level with them. So we're going to take a look here at a couple things. So by the end of this quick little lesson, you will be able to hopefully find the right fit for the accountant who works best with you. Some other tips: you're going to be prepared and on time for any meetings. You're going to be organized. You're going to communicate regularly, and you're not going to be slimy. So let's take a look here at a few things here as we go through these different objectives. So does anybody realize that anybody can call themselves an accountant in Canada? It's not a protected or reserved term like a doctor or a lawyer, where you have to be a doctor or a lawyer in order to call yourself one. You could actually take a weekend course at a local college on whatever accounting program, put an ad in your local paper or Kijiji or on Facebook and say, hey, I'm an accountant, I can do your bookkeeping. And there's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing that. So there are some folks out there who are not designated. They don't have letters behind their names. And some of them are really, really good. They've done their due diligence, they've done their education, and all the things I'm going to talk about shortly here that would sort of put them in the same classification as a designated accountant or somebody who has the letters behind their name. But you just want to know the difference between a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a designated accountant, because at the end of the day, CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, they don't really care who you had prepare your taxes, because they're going to hold you accountable for that. So if you've relied on some wackadoo to do your taxes, well, guess what? You're still on the hook. So why would you want to choose a designated accountant like a chartered professional accountant or chartered professional bookkeeper? Well, first of all, they have to adhere to professional standards. Usually they'll have many years of study and some pretty brutal different taxes or different exams that they have to do and go through and pass. They have professional development requirements, and of course they have insurance. That's important because they have to adhere to regulations around what they can say and do with their clients. And so if they give you illegal advice, they can be sued or sanctioned by their professional association. They could lose their license. And most importantly, they have to follow guidelines around protecting their client. And that is the most important thing, because if you have your bookkeeping or your taxes done by somebody who doesn't have these protections for you, they can tell you whatever they want. You can trust them because they said, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a bookkeeper. And you're the one who, at the end of the day, ends up paying for it. And I know when I was in practice, I had a lot of people who would come to me because they had gone to somebody who said they were an accountant or a bookkeeper. They didn't know what they were doing. And now Canada Revenue Agency has come back and said, I want to audit you. You've done things wrong. You all owe all these back taxes. And they would come to me going, help, what do I do? And there's not a whole lot you can do. So let's go to tip number 1. First of all, you want to shop around to find someone who has the right skills to handle your tax situation. So you don't necessarily, you've got to have sort of a picture in your mind of, I'm self-employed, or I'm somebody who just works as an employee, or maybe I've got some, I've got a mom or a dad who's just passed and I've got some issues with wrapping up their taxes, their final tax return. You have to look at your tax situation and say, okay, what kind of professional advice do I need? The next thing is you need to have the right fit personality-wise, because of course, just like in any profession, there's all sorts of different personalities. And you want to make sure that whoever you're talking to as your accountant, because you're telling them very personal information, you want to make sure that they actually jive with you. You understand how they talk. So if they give you advice, you understand it. You feel comfortable talking to them, those types of things. And of course, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with their processes. So if you're very much, a paper type person and you like your paper and you want to kind of come in and talk to them in person and, have that very face-to-face relationship, if you interview them and they say, oh, we're an online accountant, we're actually in a different city than you, we'll never actually meet up face-to-face unless if we're traveling in your city and we pop by to see you, you might want to take a look at that and go, okay, is this maybe the person for me? Because it is a very different relationship, someone who is online only versus somebody who has an in-person office. Number 2, you want to be prepared and on time for any meetings. Just like when you go to a hairdresser and your appointment's at 2:30, you don't show up at 2:45 and go, I'm here, because that hairdresser has probably moved on and taken on the next client because, their time is precious and important. And right now, much like many industries, there's more clients than there are spaces in the day for an accountant. So accountants can have the ability to pick and choose their clients, and you want to make sure that you're one of those ones that they pick rather than the ones that are first on the fire list. So respect their time, and if you can, give them a heads up about what the meeting is about. Most accountants nowadays will take an online booking. So they'll do some sort of a calendar appointment time with you, and they'll say, oh, you're booking this 30-minute slot. So if you can, say, oh, I'm just dropping off my taxes, or I have questions about tuition, or, I want to talk about my bookkeeping. Just give them a bit of a heads up so that they can maybe prepare in advance. If you have any questions that you want to ask beforehand, maybe do some research. See what information you can find. It's always good to talk to Dr. Google, because Dr. Google has all sorts of answers. And you can bounce off those questions and answers with your accountant and say, hey, I read this. Does it apply to me? If you're an existing client, make sure you tell that accountant if anything has changed in your last year. Because sometimes little things like, oh, I had a baby, or I've changed jobs and I'm now doing this type of traveling salesman job rather than this other type of job, or I've gotten married or divorced, or changed addresses. Those things are really important, and they could affect how the accountant does your taxes. Maybe there's extra credits that you now qualify for that you didn't before. If you're a new client, tell your accountant all about you. So everything, marital status, kids, activities that you're involved in, your different forms of income, do you have medical expenses? Are you going back to school and having tuition? All sorts of things like that. And if you can, bring a copy of last year's tax return. That's really handy, because then the accountant can look and go, oh, you had, this one-off thing that only shows up once a year, like a T5 slip for interest or dividends, things like that. And they may not necessarily know to watch for it if you don't say something, but if they look at last year's tax return and go, oh, there was a T5 from the Royal Bank. Oh, you have that this year? Oh, no, I sold that. Or, oh, no, I do have that. I wonder where that slip is. And of course, be prepared for an invoice, because of course, everybody charges nowadays. And so be prepared for that invoice. Next, tip number 3, be organized. First advice that I have for you is, as soon as you can, bring your information in. So if you're self-employed and that's all you do, you don't have any other, T4 income, or you don't have investments, and you're just self-employed, if you do your bookkeeping the first week of January, you could bring in your taxes the second or the third week of January, and your accountant could get started on your taxes. Really kind of cool. More and more, be prepared to drop your information off with the front desk people. So don't be afraid to talk to them and tell them things that you might have told the accountant, just things to watch for. If you can, separate your income and expenses from your different slips, because they're treated differently when you enter them on a tax return. And if you have a lot of expenses, say you're self-employed, separate those expenses into the different types. So here's all the automobile expenses, here's all the office expenses, all the meal, all the travel. Separate them into those piles, but you don't necessarily have to organize them by date, just as long as they're sort of separated by the type of expenses. I used to recommend to my clients that they pick up one of those little things that look like a briefcase with all the little holes that you can put things in. And I just say, label each of the different holes with the type of expense that you have. And as you get those receipts every year, just tuck them into those little holes. And at the end of the year, just bring in your briefcase. Nice and easy. And then if you have things like medical expenses where you might have a lot of them, if you've got some spare time, total them up, because then the accountant can use that as a double check to make sure that maybe a slip hasn't dropped off their desk or something like that. All right, any questions so far? Are we doing okay? Okay, on to tip number 4. You would be surprised how many people are surprised that April 30th happens the same time every year, and that it's tax day, and how easily it slips up on everybody. So keep in mind the deadlines that you might have, depending upon what your particular situation is. If you're talking to your accountant or your bookkeeper, let them know what's going on with you, because it could affect your financial situation. Let's say that you're looking to buy your first house. Well, if you mention that to your accountant can say, hey, do you know that there's a first-time homeowner buyer credit? Or if you're a small business person and you're looking to buy or lease an automobile, there's different tax scenarios that you would want to talk with your accountant about to find out which one's the better one for your situation. Accountants are consultants, so let them consult with you. Ask their opinion before you make any of those big decisions regarding your business or regarding your money. And trust their advice, because they've got years of schooling and experience, and you can temper that with whatever it is you know and how you feel, so that you can set yourself up the best you can with your financial situation. Now, if you're a small business, so you're self-employed, plan on quarterly meetings. You should be touching base with your accountant every quarter just to make sure that everything's, working out well, see whether they have any suggestions. And if you just do personal taxes with them, plan on a semi-annual or a pre-year-end meeting for tax planning. So this is particularly important if you do RRSPs. So you could come with your December 31st pay stub and say, hey, this is what my pay stub looks like. Should I invest in an RSP? And at what point does it make a difference? Do I put in $2,000, $5,000, $10,000? At what point does it start to move that needle? If you come in on, 2 days before the RRSP deadline, the accountant's not going to be able to help you. And of course, once you've found someone, again, remember, they're going to bill you like a professional. So just like you would fully expect to pay any other professional, whether it's a lawyer, a doctor, your hairdresser, your massage therapist, whoever you're dealing with, they're gonna charge you a professional rate. So be prepared for that. All right, tip number 5, don't be slimy. This is the one I always love. Did you know that a good accountant can tell a liar a mile away? Because your books and your financial information tell a story. And if your numbers don't add up, they know that something's wrong. There is a difference between aggressive tax planning and tax fraud. And most accountants will, 99.999% of the accountants are willing to go the aggressive tax planning end of things, but not necessarily tax fraud, because the reality is getting you back a little bit more in a fraudulent refund is not worth it to me as the accountant, because I could lose my license and my designation if I knowingly participate in a fraud. So, if you're looking to get me to participate in that tax fraud, it had better be mighty big to have me even bite at that, because it could be my license, it could be my profession. At the end of the day, as I mentioned before, Canada Revenue Agency holds you responsible for whatever you have sent in on your tax return. So read those documents and ask questions if you don't understand. A good accountant loves client questions, so don't be afraid to ask them. So in summary, find an accountant who fits your style and who you feel comfortable with. Be prepared and on time for your meetings. Be as organized as possible. Communicate regularly with your accountant. and don't be slimy. So thanks for joining me tonight to learn how to make the best use of your accounting professional. Any questions? Oh, Tamara's got her hand up. I'm a good gal, and so I love questions. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I actually meant to hit the clap signal and just say thanks for the presentation. I do use a tax professional, and I value that relationship very much. So I appreciate the presentation a lot.
Oh, great. Thank you. Did anybody have any questions or any suggestions for my delivery?
It was great.
It was really great. I had no idea that it wasn't regulated.
A lot of people don't realize that. And it's very frustrating for designated accountants because we have all these rules that we need to follow, and rightly so. And you've got, Sally Smith down at the end of the street who's just hung out her shingle because she took an H&R Block course, last winter, and now she's doing tax returns and charging the same rate that I'm charging, but yet she doesn't know diddly squat.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
I can totally relate because it's the same for the hair industry. We're not regulated as hairstylists, so anybody can just do hair, right? And it makes it really difficult for those of us who have put in that effort for our schooling and our education and really knowing what we're doing, right?
Oh, exactly.
I'm on the same page here with you.
Oh, great. All righty. So I'm going to stop my share and stop my recording. And